AITA for refusing to compromise on my wedding plans, even though it upset my family? I, 29F, have been with my fiancé, Mark, 31M, for 6 years. We've lived together for 4 and have been engaged for a year. From the very beginning of our engagement, I made it clear that I wanted a small, intimate wedding. My vision has always been 50 guests or fewer, mostly family and close friends. I'm someone who gets anxious in large crowds, and honestly, the idea of standing in front of 200 people and trying to smile while being the center of attention sounds like a nightmare to me. Mark was fully on board with this plan, and in fact, he likes things more private as well. When we first started talking about wedding venues, my parents immediately started pushing for something huge. They want a massive church ceremony followed by a banquet hall with 250-plus guests. Their reasoning is that it's a once-in-a-lifetime event, and we've always dreamed of a grand wedding for our daughter. I tried explaining that my dream has always been different and that I want the day to feel personal rather than a performance, but they kept saying I'm being selfish. I also have a younger sister, Emma, 26F, who has been particularly vocal. She says she feels left out because she can't invite her friends if we stick to the small guest list. I reminded her that our wedding is not about her social life and that she will still have a role in the wedding, but that did not appease her. My mother started hinting that I owe her and my father a bigger wedding because they've hosted big events in the past, and it would be a shame if my wedding didn't match that. As the planning continued, I started getting proposals for venues that were way beyond what I wanted and could afford. My fiancé and I have been trying to budget carefully because we're planning on buying a house later this year. Most of these larger venues would eat up almost all our savings. I politely declined, explaining again that our priority is a meaningful, intimate ceremony rather than spectacle. My parents began to make passive-aggressive remarks about us being stingy and not valuing family traditions. The conflict escalated when my mother suggested she would cover the cost if we had the big wedding. At first, I thought this was generous, but it quickly became clear that it came with strings attached. She began sending me long emails detailing guest lists, seating arrangements, color schemes, and even suggesting what Mark and I should wear. Mark and I had a meeting to discuss it, and we agreed we still wanted to keep it small, even if it meant paying for it ourselves. When we told my parents, they were furious. My father accused us of being ungrateful and disrespectful. My mother cried and told me that I was ruining her dream. Emma started making snide remarks, saying I don't care about family happiness and that Mark and I are controlling for not bending to family wishes. Over the next few weeks, every family interaction turned into an argument about the wedding. I even received a message from my aunt saying that if I don't reconsider, she won't attend, which I found hurtful. I tried to compromise in small ways. I allowed for a slightly bigger guest list than we initially planned. 50 guests became 65, but anything beyond that felt overwhelming. I even offered to have a small reception afterward where more distant friends could be invited, so they wouldn't feel completely excluded. Despite these attempts, my family still complains that I am ruining the event and that I don't care about them. The breaking point came when my parents sent me a formal letter listing the conditions under which they would provide financial help, including mandatory approval of every decision regarding the wedding. I realized that accepting their money would mean giving up control over a day that should reflect both me and Mark. I called a family meeting and told them that while I appreciate their offers, we will be paying for the wedding ourselves to ensure it aligns with our vision. My father accused me of being immature, my mother accused me of being selfish, and Emma called me a brat who only thinks about herself. Since then, the tension has been unbearable. Family dinners are tense, phone calls are curt, and I've even had relatives guilt-trip me on social media. Friends of mine have told me I am justified in wanting a wedding that feels right for me, but my family insists I am overreacting and should just play along to make everyone happy. Mark has been incredibly supportive, reminding me that this is our day, but I feel guilty because my actions have caused my family so much distress. At this point, the guest list is finalized at 65 people, the venue is booked, and I am focusing on the details that matter to me. However, The constant criticism from my family has left me questioning if I am truly the unreasonable one. I know they are upset because they want to celebrate me, but I also know that their idea of celebration is very different from mine. I don't want to compromise my mental health or the integrity of the day I've been dreaming about for years. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to have a bigger wedding even though it upset my family? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious. When do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to pay for my younger brother's wedding after years of financial strain. So, this is going to be a bit long, but I'll try to be as clear as possible. I, 34M, have a younger brother, Alex, 29M, who recently got engaged. Our family dynamic has always been a little complicated. Our parents divorced when I was 15, and from that point on, I kind of took on a more responsible role for both of us. Not in a parental way, but more in making sure bills were paid, helping with school, and generally making sure Alex had some guidance. Over the years, I've also been the one to help financially when needed. For example, I helped Alex pay for his first car, contributed to his college tuition when he was struggling with student loans, and even helped him move into his first apartment. I don't say this to brag, but I mention it because it sets up the context for why things got tense recently. I've always felt like I was the financial backbone of the family, even though I'm not wealthy by any means. Fast forward to last month. Alex called me, clearly excited, to tell me that he had proposed to his girlfriend, Emily. She seems nice enough, and I'm happy for him, but that excitement quickly turned into stress when Alex started discussing wedding plans. Right off the bat, he started hinting that I would help pay for the wedding. I tried to steer the conversation gently, saying something like, I'm happy to help with advice or planning, but I'm not in a position to contribute a large sum financially. He brushed it off at first, saying, Come on, you've helped me out before. This won't be any different. I reminded him that helping with tuition or a car is very different from funding a wedding that could easily cost tens of thousands. He argued that I have a stable job and that it would be a great way for me to show I care. Over the next week, the pressure intensified. He started sending me links to wedding venues, dresses, and catering options with comments like, Wouldn't this be perfect if you chipped in? And I know you've always wanted to see me happy on my big day. I even got messages from our mom and stepdad, subtly suggesting that helping Alex would be the right thing to do. I felt cornered and frustrated because this was starting to feel less like a celebration and more like a financial demand. One weekend, Alex invited me over to discuss things in person. He opened with, So, I figured you could handle the bulk of the wedding expenses and mom and dad can chip in too. I was stunned. I said clearly, Alex, I cannot and will not pay for your wedding. I've supported you in ways that I could handle financially before, but this is different. This is your wedding. You and Emily need to figure this out yourselves. He got visibly upset, saying, After everything I've gone through, you won't even help me with this? You're being selfish. I try to stay calm and explain that I've had years of financial strain myself. My rent has increased, I have student loans, and I'm saving for a house. I also pointed out that just because I've helped in the past doesn't mean I'm obligated to cover huge expenses now. Alex accused me of being jealous of his relationship or trying to punish him because he's happy. I denied it and reminded him that I'm actually thrilled about the engagement. Things escalated quickly. He started yelling that I didn't care about family and that our parents would be disappointed. I told him I wasn't going to argue, and I left. After that, he stopped talking to me for a few days. When he finally messaged, it was a text saying, Fine, you're not coming to the wedding then. I responded calmly, saying that I still want to celebrate with him, but I cannot fund a wedding. I suggested contributing in non-financial ways, helping with planning, DIY decorations, organizing small pre-wedding events, etc. Alex didn't reply, and when I asked our mom about it, she said he feels betrayed and, like you, don't love him enough. Since then, family gatherings have been tense. Other relatives have reached out to me privately, some supporting my decision, some saying I should help family when I can. I feel like I'm caught in this impossible position where being honest about my financial limitations makes me look selfish, even though I've been helping Alex for over a decade. I love my brother and want him to have a beautiful wedding, but I also feel like this is a boundary issue. I'm trying to maintain financial responsibility for myself and my future, and I feel resentful that my past generosity is now being leveraged as an expectation. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to pay for my younger brother's wedding? For context, here's a bit about my financial situation. I make about $60,000 a year. I live in a moderately expensive city, and my monthly expenses, including rent, utilities, student loans, and groceries, eat up about 80% of my income. I do have some savings, but nothing close to covering a wedding. Alex, on the other hand, makes roughly $50,000 a year and works part-time while finishing his master's program. Emily, his fiancée, also has some student debt. Their combined finances could theoretically cover a modest wedding, but Alex seems to think anything less than a big, elaborate affair is unacceptable. Some family members are suggesting I offer a contribution like a few $1,000s instead of the full wedding cost, but I don't see how that's fair when Alex is already demanding that I fund most of it. I don't want to feel like I'm being manipulated into paying for something I can't afford, and I feel like my brother is taking advantage of past generosity. So far, I've held firm on my position, but I'm anxious about future family interactions. I don't want this to permanently damage my relationship with Alex, but I also don't want to set a precedent of paying for milestones I can't reasonably afford. I know this isn't a simple yes or no situation. I feel torn because I genuinely want to support him emotionally and practically, but I also need to protect my financial stability. I just don't understand why my past assistance is now being twisted into an expectation for an enormous, expensive event that is realistically outside my means. Reddit AITA here. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house after he publicly embarrassed me at a family gathering. I never thought I'd be in a position where I would have to draw such a hard line with my family. But here we are. I, 29F, have always been close to my sister, 31F, and for most of my life, we've been the type of siblings people envy. She recently got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 33M, who I had met a few times before, but I never felt a strong connection with him. I didn't dislike him per se, but there was always something off about the way he carried himself, arrogant, dismissive, and a little condescending without even realizing it. The problem escalated last month during a family dinner I hosted. I had invited my sister, Mark, our parents, and a few other relatives. I spent an entire day preparing, cooking, and setting up because I genuinely wanted everyone to have a good time. The dinner started off fine. Conversations were casual, and everyone seemed to be in good spirits. That's when Mark started making jokes. At first, there were small comments about my apartment being too small or how I could never possibly entertain as well as my sister does at her new place. I brushed them off, thinking he was just nervous or trying to be funny. Then, after dinner, I went to bring out the dessert I had made, a homemade cheesecake, which took hours to perfect. Mark loudly announced, in front of everyone, "Wow, is this supposed to be a cheesecake or a failed science experiment?" Everyone went quiet. My sister laughed nervously, probably trying to diffuse the tension, but I was mortified. I smiled tightly and said, "Thanks, Mark. I appreciate the feedback," but my hand was shaking. Later in the evening, when people were getting up to leave, he commented on my wine collection, saying, "I didn't know you drank cheap stuff like this. I guess it's fine for someone living alone." My parents looked uncomfortable, my sister looked upset, and I excused myself to my room to calm down. The rest of the night was tense. No one really apologized, and Mark acted like nothing happened. After that night, I made it clear to my sister that I wasn't comfortable having Mark over again, at least until he could show some respect. I wasn't asking for him to be my best friend. I just didn't want someone in my own home who made me feel small and humiliated in front of my family. My sister was upset, but said she understood, though she hinted that maybe I was overreacting. The real conflict happened when my sister's wedding plans were in full swing. She asked if Mark could stay at my apartment for a night before the wedding because their hotel arrangements fell through. I immediately said no. I explained exactly why. The way he treated me at the family dinner was completely unacceptable, and I didn't feel safe or comfortable having him in my personal space. I even offered alternative solutions, like helping them find another hotel or suggesting Airbnb options nearby. My sister got defensive and said, "You're being dramatic. He wouldn't do that again. He's sorry." I told her that apologies don't erase public humiliation, especially when it's pattern behavior I've noticed before. This led to a massive argument. She accused me of being selfish and trying to control her wedding plans. I reminded her that this wasn't about controlling anything. It was about my boundaries. She said that family should stick together and that I was overreacting because it's just one bad joke. I tried to explain that it wasn't just a joke. It was a culmination of several instances where he subtly put me down. She insisted that I was imagining things and that Mark's comments weren't meant to be harmful. It got worse when my parents got involved. They tried to mediate, saying that Mark didn't mean anything by it and that refusing him a place to stay was extreme. I calmly told them that I value my mental health and personal space more than temporarily appeasing someone who has repeatedly disrespected me. My father said, "But it's family. You should think about her wedding and not make things difficult." I told him that making my sister's wedding easier does not include tolerating abuse or humiliation. Since then, my relationship with my sister has been strained. She avoids the topic now, but won't look me in the eye when it comes to wedding logistics. Mark seems to act as if nothing happened, which makes me angrier. My friends have been divided. Some say I'm justified in protecting my home and my dignity, while others think I'm overreacting because it's for the sake of family and that I should let it go for one night. I want to be fair. I don't want to ruin my sister's wedding, and I don't want to be the villain aunt if extended family finds out about this. But at the same time, I can't shake the feeling that allowing him to stay at my house would send the wrong message, that I am okay with being publicly embarrassed and demeaned. I've tried reasoning with my sister calmly, even offering alternatives, but she seems to think I'm being unreasonable. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house because of how he treated me during a family gathering. I genuinely don't want to escalate things further, but I also don't want to compromise my boundaries. The last thing I want is to be forced to host someone who has shown blatant disrespect in my own home. I've tried to maintain a polite distance, offered other options for lodging, and clearly communicated why this is a hard no for me. Yet, the tension with my sister and family is growing, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm truly in the wrong for prioritizing my well-being over temporary family convenience. I feel like I'm standing up for myself, but the guilt is creeping in because my sister is hurt and insists I'm being selfish. I want to do right by my sister and support her wedding, but I don't know if letting Mark stay would compromise my sense of safety and respect in my own home. AITA for refusing to help my brother after he made a huge life choice I disagreed with. I, 32F, have always been close to my younger brother, Jason, 29M. We grew up in a household where our parents emphasized independence, personal responsibility, and the importance of thinking things through. Jason and I have very different personalities. He's spontaneous, a bit reckless, and tends to live in the moment, while I'm more cautious, organized, and long-term minded. Despite that, I've always supported him, whether it was helping him move apartments, giving him career advice, or just listening when he needed to vent. Things got complicated a few months ago when Jason made a decision that I felt was completely irresponsible. He told me that he had decided to quit his job, a stable, well-paying position at a tech company, to pursue a passion project full-time. On paper, it sounded like a dream. He wanted to start a small bakery, selling pastries online and at local markets. He insisted that this was what he'd always wanted, and he was excited to finally take the leap. I was supportive at first, but as he started to explain the financial and logistical plans, my concern grew. Jason had very little savings, no business experience, and was planning to take out a loan to cover startup costs. His plan for paying rent and other living expenses while the business got off the ground was vague at best. I tried to talk to him rationally, pointing out that passion projects are wonderful, but practical considerations like rent, health insurance, and basic living costs can't be ignored. I suggested he start the bakery as a side project while keeping his job, or at least save a significant emergency fund before quitting. He brushed me off, saying I was being negative and didn't understand his vision. Things escalated when he asked me for financial help. He wanted me to co-sign a loan for him, saying that with my good credit, the bank would approve it easily. I was shocked. I told him I couldn't co-sign because it was a huge risk and that I wasn't comfortable being responsible for a loan for a business I didn't believe in. He got angry, accused me of being unsupportive, and said I was holding him back from achieving his dreams. At that point, I decided to step back from helping him financially or with business advice. I still tried to support him emotionally, but I made it clear that I wasn't going to put myself in financial jeopardy for a business I thought was highly risky. Jason became increasingly resentful. He started making passive-aggressive comments whenever I visited, criticizing my safe, boring life and saying I would never understand what it means to take risks. Our other siblings got involved, with some trying to mediate and others picking sides. The breaking point came a few weeks ago. Jason had been struggling to get his bakery off the ground. Sales were slow, and he had already used a significant portion of his savings. He called me in a panic, saying he had to pay his supplier immediately or his entire operation would collapse. He begged me to lend him money, claiming it would be temporary, and he'd pay me back once the business was profitable. I calmly told him no. I explained that I couldn't lend him money, that it wasn't responsible, and that he needed to figure out how to manage his finances without involving me. He exploded. He started yelling, saying I was selfish, that I was letting him fail, and that I didn't care about him at all. After that call, I didn't hear from him for a few days. When we finally spoke, he said some very hurtful things, accusing me of abandoning him and claiming I had no faith in him because I was jealous or didn't want him to succeed. I tried to explain that this wasn't about jealousy or a lack of faith. It was about practicality and my own boundaries, but he wouldn't listen. Now, our relationship is strained. He has stopped including me in his life events and updates, and it feels like every interaction is tense. I've talked to a few friends and family members, and opinions are split. Some say I should have helped him financially at least a little, just to support his dream. Others say I was right to protect myself and not put myself at risk for a business that might fail. I don't regret setting boundaries, but I do feel sad that my brother seems to resent me now. I want to support him emotionally, but it's hard when he frames any refusal to take risks on my part as a personal betrayal. So, AITA for refusing to financially help my brother after he quit his job to start a risky business? Or am I justified in prioritizing my own financial security, even at the cost of our relationship? AITA for refusing to help my sister move, even though she's insisting I owe her? I, 32F, have a complicated relationship with my sister, 28F, and the situation has escalated to the point where our family is divided. I feel like I'm being unfairly painted as the villain, but I want to explain everything so people can see both sides. A little background. My sister and I grew up in a fairly typical household. My parents always tried to treat us equally, but there were times when I got more responsibility as the older sibling. I was okay with it at first because it seemed normal, but over time it created some underlying tension. We were never super close in our adult years. We talk occasionally, celebrate birthdays together, and meet up for holidays, but we don't confide in each other much. About 6 months ago, she bought her first apartment. It's a small place, just a one-bedroom, but she was excited because it's her first grown-up space that she owns. She has been posting about it constantly on social media, showing off furniture and decor ideas. I was happy for her and congratulated her, but I wasn't involved beyond that. Fast forward to last week. She calls me out of the blue and says she needs my help moving all her stuff from her current apartment to the new one. The way she said it immediately rubbed me the wrong way. She said, and I quote, "You're my sister, so you have to help me. You owe me for everything I've done for you." I was taken aback. I asked her to clarify what she meant by owe me, and she said it's because she's helped me in the past with things like moving furniture, babysitting my niece when I was briefly looking after a friend's child, and giving me advice about work. She made it sound like there's a ledger, and I'm in debt. I told her I couldn't help with her move. My reasoning is several-fold. I live about 2 hours away from her current apartment, and moving requires at least a full day. Between gas, time, and energy, it's a big commitment. I've been dealing with some personal issues lately, including work stress and mental health struggles. I just can't take on something physically and emotionally exhausting right now. I don't think familial obligations should be calculated in terms of who owes what. I've helped her before when I could, but I've never signed up for a permanent moving service role in our family. When I told her I couldn't help, she got extremely upset. She accused me of being selfish, ungrateful, and a bad sister. She even texted my parents, saying I was refusing to help her just to be difficult. My parents were frustrated because they didn't want to get involved, but they did try to convince me to help, saying it would make my sister happy and that I should just bite the bullet for family. I explained my reasons again, and they were sympathetic to a point but still seemed disappointed. The situation escalated when she started posting things online that were indirectly about me. She made a few posts about siblings who never step up when you need them and implied she was struggling because of people who supposedly owe her. I didn't respond publicly because I didn't want to escalate it further, but some mutual friends messaged me asking if I had done something to upset her. I tried to explain, and some of them sided with me, but others said I should just help because family comes first. I want to be clear that I do care about my sister. I've helped her before, and I would in reasonable circumstances. But moving, especially under the framing that I owe her, feels wrong. I also feel manipulated because she keeps insisting that family loyalty is about fulfilling specific tasks rather than mutual care and support. Some people have suggested that I could have help for a few hours or offered other assistance, like hiring movers or packing boxes. I did offer to help her organize her move online by giving tips for packing efficiently and suggesting moving services in her area. She rejected that and said, "That's not enough. You have to be there physically. It's not hard. Just come and help. I know you're making excuses." I tried reasoning with her calmly, explaining my own limitations, but she keeps framing it as me being inconsiderate. She has also brought up old incidents where she felt I didn't help her or acknowledge her efforts. For example, she reminded me of a time I didn't attend her graduation party because I had a work commitment. I apologize for that, but she uses it as proof that I am selfish. Now, the rest of my family is in a weird position. My parents are trying to mediate, but my sister is insisting that if I don't show up to move her things, our relationship will be damaged permanently. She even said she might stop speaking to me entirely. I don't want that to happen, but I also don't want to compromise my mental health or be guilted into doing something I can't manage. I feel like my sister is treating me more like a service provider than a sibling. I want to support her, but I also need boundaries. I've tried suggesting compromises, like hiring professional movers, helping pack a few boxes in advance, or coming for a short visit after the move to help settle in. But she refuses. She says none of that counts because families should just do it themselves. At this point, the tension is high. I haven't spoken to her for a few days because every interaction seems to lead to guilt tripping or accusations. I feel frustrated and hurt because I've always tried to help where I can, but it feels like nothing I do is ever enough. Meanwhile, friends and some extended family members are telling me I'm overreacting and that I should just help your sister and stop making it a big deal. I honestly don't know if I'm the asshole here. I don't think asking for physical and time commitment that I can't give and framing it as a debt I owe is fair. But I also don't want to be seen as cold or uncaring. I feel like if I give in, I'll resent her and create long-term resentment. But if I don't, I risk the relationship completely breaking. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to help my sister move because I don't agree with her framing of obligation and feel unable to meet her demands. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of how she treated me for years. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Lisa, 28F, and growing up, we were always on completely different wavelengths. I was more introverted, academically inclined, and careful with my choices, while Lisa was outgoing, adventurous, and very socially driven. Our parents always favored Lisa in subtle ways. She got more attention for her achievements, and whenever I did something notable, it was quietly acknowledged, often overshadowed by whatever Lisa was doing at the time. Over the years, this created a lot of resentment between us. As adults, I tried to keep the peace and maintain some form of a relationship. I attended her birthday parties, celebrated milestones, and helped her out when she needed advice or support. I never expected her to reciprocate fully, but I thought at least there would be mutual respect. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Lisa has a long history of making me feel small or insignificant, sometimes under the guise of jokes, sometimes more overtly. She has a habit of turning conversations back to her, dismissing my accomplishments, and even sharing private family issues in public forums, often painting me in a bad light. The breaking point began a few years ago when she started dating her now fiancé, Tom, 30M. I was initially supportive, but Tom quickly showed he didn't respect me either. During family gatherings, he would make comments that implied I was boring or overly serious, sometimes laughing at my choices in front of everyone. I tried to shrug it off, thinking maybe they didn't know me well yet, but it only escalated. Lisa never corrected him or even acknowledged these instances, which made me feel like she was complicit. When Lisa got engaged last year, I assumed I would be involved in the wedding planning to some extent, or at least be asked for input on things like the guest list or family seating. Instead, I was largely ignored. Invitations to planning meetings were sent out late or after decisions were already made, and when I offered to help with anything, my suggestions were either dismissed or ignored. I started noticing patterns where she would subtly exclude me from certain events or make decisions without consulting me, even when it directly affected me, like seating arrangements where I would be placed far from close family. I attempted to have a calm conversation with her about it, explaining that I felt hurt and left out, hoping she would understand and adjust. Lisa's response was defensive. She said that I was overreacting, that the wedding planning was stressful, and that she didn't mean to exclude me. I tried to emphasize that it wasn't just about the wedding, but a long-standing pattern of her undermining me. She refused to engage, saying I was bringing up the past unnecessarily. Over the next few months, the tension escalated. Lisa and Tom continued planning the wedding without consulting me at all, even on matters like family traditions that I thought I had a right to have input on. I was invited, but it felt more like a formality than a genuine inclusion. The final straw came when I found out they were expecting me to host a pre-wedding event at my home. They never asked me. They just assumed I would. Well, I told them I wasn't comfortable doing that because I felt manipulated and excluded throughout the planning. Lisa accused me of trying to ruin her wedding and said I was being dramatic. I felt hurt, humiliated, and like my efforts to have a healthy family relationship were being dismissed. After a lot of consideration, I decided not to attend the wedding at all. I wrote a long message to Lisa explaining my reasons. I told her that I couldn't celebrate her special day because of the way she and Tom treated me over the years and the way she had excluded me from the planning process. I made it clear that this was not about her getting married, but about patterns of behavior that had made me feel disrespected and devalued. Naturally, my decision caused a huge family divide. My parents were furious, saying I was overreacting and that I was ruining Lisa's big day. Some cousins and friends tried to mediate, suggesting I attend at least for a short time, but I stuck to my decision. Lisa has not spoken to me since the message. Tom has publicly criticized me to other family members, calling me dramatic and selfish. My parents keep telling me I should apologize or risk losing the family entirely. I feel conflicted because I genuinely love my sister and want a relationship, but I also feel like my boundaries and feelings have been completely ignored for years. Now, some extended family members have started taking sides. A few are sympathetic, saying I have a right to protect myself from toxic dynamics, while others insist I'm overreacting and that family obligations should come first, especially for a wedding. I've considered going back and attending just to avoid further drama, but I worry it would only validate the behavior that has hurt me. I'm posting here because I want to understand whether I handled this situation reasonably or if I overreacted. I feel like my absence was necessary for my mental health, but I also don't want to be seen as the villain who sabotaged my sister's wedding. I haven't said anything more since the message, and I have no intention of engaging in arguments or confrontations, but the family fallout has been stressful and isolating. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of feeling excluded, dismissed, and hurt by her behavior. AITA for refusing to let my brother stay in my house after he lost his job. So a bit of background. I, 32F, have a reasonably stable life. I work full-time in tech, I own my apartment, and I live alone. My younger brother, Jake, 28M, has always had a more turbulent life. He bounced between jobs, some short-term gigs, and recently, he got laid off from a company he'd been at for about a year. Normally, I try to help him where I can, whether it's advice, connecting him with people, or occasionally giving him rides. But there are limits, and this situation pushed me to those limits. About 2 weeks ago, Jake called me out of the blue, sounding frantic. He said he had no money, no place to stay, and that he'd been living out of his car for a few nights. He begged me to let him crash at my apartment until he got back on his feet. I listened, genuinely concerned, and asked a few questions. Had he applied for unemployment? Had he reached out to other friends? Did he have a plan? He admitted he hadn't done much of that. He was just hoping I would take him in. Here's the thing. My apartment is a one-bedroom. It's my sanctuary. I work from home a lot, and the thought of having someone else there constantly, especially someone who has a history of not respecting boundaries, was stressful. Jake has stayed with me a couple of times in the past, and while it didn't end catastrophically, he tends to leave messes, borrow things without asking, and can be very passive-aggressive if I set rules. I told him honestly that I didn't think it would be a good idea for him to move in. I offered to help him find temporary accommodations, like a shelter or a short-term Airbnb, and to help him with a job search, but I could not let him live in my apartment. He got really upset. He accused me of being selfish, saying I was family, and that family should help each other in tough times. I reminded him that helping doesn't always mean letting someone live in your house. I offered to pay for a hotel for a few nights if that would help him get on his feet, but he refused. He said a hotel wouldn't solve the bigger problem, and I was being cold and heartless. A few days later, he showed up at my apartment anyway, saying he had nowhere else to go. I told him firmly that he could not stay, and he started crying and pleading. I ended up calling a friend of mine who volunteers at a local shelter, and she was able to get him into a temporary program for a week. I felt bad doing that, but I really could not handle having him in my small space. Since then, our relationship has been tense. He's been texting me repeatedly, alternating between anger and guilt-tripping messages. He's accused me of not caring about him, of not being a good sister, and even said he might never speak to me again. I understand that being unemployed and without a home is terrifying, and I do feel for him, but I honestly feel like I did everything I could without compromising my own mental health and stability. I mentioned this situation to a few mutual friends, and they are split. Some say I should have let him stay temporarily, even with the downsides, because family is supposed to help in times of crisis. Others say I was right to set boundaries because he has a history of not respecting them, and letting him stay could have led to long-term resentment or problems in my own life. I want to maintain a relationship with Jake, but I also don't want to feel like I have to sacrifice my entire living situation every time he faces a crisis. I keep thinking maybe I could have done something differently to balance both of our needs, but I'm not sure what that would have looked like. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my brother stay in my house after he lost his job. Additional details if needed. I offered to help financially in ways that didn't involve him living with me. I do have a busy schedule and work from home, so having a roommate temporarily would be extremely stressful. Jake has other family members, but our parents live abroad and he has expressed that he doesn't want to bother them. He has stayed with me before, and it was always a tense experience, but he seemed to expect that history to automatically make it okay for him to stay this time. I'm feeling really torn because I do love him, but I also feel like he's taking advantage of me emotionally. I'm interested in perspectives from people who've dealt with family in crisis and how they balanced helping with maintaining boundaries. AITA for refusing to let my brother's new fiancée plan my mother's funeral. My mother passed away last month after a long battle with cancer. She was 72 and had been living with us for the past few years because her health had deteriorated significantly. I had been her primary caregiver, along with my younger brother, Mark, who lived a few towns over. While Mark helped out when he could, I handled most of the day-to-day stuff, including her appointments, medications, and personal care. A few months ago, Mark announced he was engaged to someone new, Lisa. They've been dating for just over 6 months. I met Lisa a few times, and while she seemed nice, I didn't know her very well, and honestly, I was skeptical about her motives. She had a lot of social media posts about extravagant weddings and luxury lifestyles, which clashed with my family's more modest approach to life. When my mother passed, Mark immediately flew in to be with the family. The funeral was approaching, and that's when the tension began. Lisa started taking over conversations about the funeral planning. She suggested we have a lavish ceremony with hundreds of guests, expensive floral arrangements, and a catered reception. She even mentioned booking a professional event planner and a photographer to capture every moment. I was shocked. My mother had always said she wanted a small, simple service, just close family and a few friends. I tried to explain this to Mark and Lisa, but Lisa dismissed my concerns, saying that we should honor her properly, and that I was being too frugal and unimaginative. Mark didn't outright disagree, but he didn't support me either. I decided to step in. I told Lisa that I appreciated her wanting to help, but that the funeral was my mother's, not hers, and that I intended to follow my mother's wishes. Lisa was furious. She claimed I was being controlling and disrespectful. She said that Mark and she had every right to contribute since Mark was her son, too, and implied that my role as primary caregiver didn't give me the final say. Things escalated quickly. Lisa started telling extended family members that I was making everything about myself and pushing people away during a difficult time. Some relatives started asking me if I was okay, which added pressure. I tried to stay calm and focus on organizing the funeral according to what my mother wanted. A small chapel service, a few readings she had picked out, and a modest luncheon afterward. Mark, to his credit, eventually sided with me in private, but refused to confront Lisa directly. He kept saying, "Just let her vent, she'll calm down." But Lisa didn't calm down. On the day of the funeral, she showed up with a camera crew, a huge bouquet of flowers, and insisted on arranging the seating. She even tried to move the funeral service to a larger hall she had booked last minute. I had to stop her at the door and explain that this was not what my mother wanted and that we had already secured the venue. She argued in front of guests, which was humiliating. After the funeral, things got worse. Lisa started sending messages to Mark and me about how I had ruined the day and that my mother's passing was a chance to create memories, not just follow a checklist. Mark defended me, telling her that honoring our mother's wishes was not a checklist, and that it was the right thing to do. Lisa accused him of taking my side out of sibling loyalty and threatened to distance herself if he didn't support her vision in the future. Now, several weeks later, family gatherings are tense. Lisa refuses to acknowledge that she overstepped, and Mark seems caught in the middle. Some relatives have expressed sympathy for me, while others think I should have compromised to keep the peace. I feel like I did the right thing by standing up for my mother's wishes, but I also see that Lisa is upset and Mark is frustrated. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancé plan my mother's funeral and insisting we follow my mother's wishes instead. Additional context. My mother explicitly said she did not want a large or extravagant funeral. I spent the last few years caring for my mother full-time. Lisa has only known my family for a short time, about 6 months. Mark initially tried to stay neutral, but privately agrees with me. Some extended family members think I should have let Lisa help to avoid conflict. I want to respect my mother, but I also don't want to be labeled as selfish or controlling. I'm trying to find the balance, but Lisa's behavior has made that almost impossible. Have I overstepped by asserting control over the funeral planning? Or was I right to prioritize my mother's wishes over my brother's fiancé's opinions? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé. So, this is going to be a long one, and I feel like I need to give full context because my family is already divided over this, and I need an outsider's perspective. I, 29F, have always been extremely close with my younger sister, Emily, 27F. We grew up in a tight-knit household where our parents were very hands-on, so we basically did everything together. We were more like best friends than siblings for most of our lives. Over the last 5 years, though, things have gotten complicated. Emily started dating someone named Brian about 4 years ago. At first, I tried really hard to be welcoming because she was happy and I genuinely wanted that for her. But almost immediately, I noticed things that made me uncomfortable. Brian is charming in public and with family, but in private, he's manipulative and controlling. He has this way of subtly putting me down whenever I visit, usually disguised as jokes, and he frequently belittles Emily for the same things I notice. For example, if Emily mentions wanting to do something spontaneous, he will laugh at her, call her naive, or insist she should be realistic. I've tried talking to Emily about it, but she gets defensive. She says I'm imagining things, that I'm too sensitive, or that I'm biased because I don't like him. Over the past few years, this pattern has escalated. Brian has started dictating things about Emily's life in ways that directly affect me. He has told her not to invite me to certain family events because she always makes things awkward, even though I've always been polite and tried to be a part of her life. At first, I brushed it off as a quirk of his personality, but then I noticed it wasn't random. It was deliberate. Emily, unfortunately, seems to have bought into his narrative or at least doesn't want to confront him. Fast forward to last year, Emily got engaged. I was surprised because, honestly, I didn't see the relationship going that far due to how controlling Brian can be. When she announced it, I congratulated her, but I made it clear I had serious reservations about him. She didn't take it well. She accused me of trying to sabotage her happiness and always thinking you know better. I tried to explain that my concern was for her well-being, not about me. After the engagement, I realized that if I attended the wedding, I would basically be endorsing someone I think is toxic and possibly abusive. I try to raise my concerns with my parents, who are somewhat aware of Brian's behavior. They don't outright condemn him. They just say things like he seems fine to us or Emily is happy, so that's what matters. I don't think they fully see the manipulative side, which has been frustrating. Things came to a head when Emily asked me directly whether I would be part of the wedding party. I was honest with her. I would not participate in any official capacity if Brian was involved because I couldn't support someone who treats her poorly. She was furious. She cried, accused me of being selfish, and told me I was choosing Brian over her. I tried to explain that it wasn't about him versus her. It was about standing up for her, but she refused to see it that way. I thought maybe I could still attend as a guest and try to keep my distance for Brian, but then she sent me the wedding invite and included a note that basically said, "We understand you may not be comfortable, but we hope you can be there for Emily anyway." It felt like an emotional trap. I reached out again to explain my reasoning, highlighting specific instances where Brian had crossed boundaries or treated us poorly. I said that attending would feel like condoning his behavior. Emily called me cold, said I was putting myself above family, and blocked me for a week after that conversation. During that time, I had a lot of reflection. I truly wanted to support my sister, but I realized that doing so in a way that ignored Brian's toxicity would make me complicit. I decided to write her a letter explaining that I love her, that I am proud of her, and that I hope she has a wonderful wedding, but I cannot attend while Brian is part of it. I sent it, and unsurprisingly, it caused an explosion in my family group chat. My parents are upset, my extended family is shocked, and Emily hasn't spoken to me since. The fallout has been massive. My parents keep hinting that I should make an effort for Emily's sake, but I feel like that would mean betraying my own values. My cousins are split. Some agree with me, saying they've seen Brian's controlling behavior, and others say I'm overreacting. My friends are supportive, but I can't help feeling guilty. I've been crying almost every day because I feel like I'm losing my sister and possibly the family I've always known. I know Emily is an adult and can make her own choices, and I also know that refusing to attend her wedding is dramatic. But every scenario where I go, I imagine having to smile while someone I think is toxic undermines her confidence or manipulates the situation. I also worry that showing up might give her the wrong impression that I approve of their dynamic. I'm trying to balance love for my sister with protecting myself and my principles. I've already accepted that she may not forgive me, but I don't want to compromise my integrity or enable someone I think is harmful. The problem is, no one in the family seems to see it this way, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm actually being unreasonable. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé? Or am I right to take a stand even if it costs me my relationship with her? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé? So, this is a bit of a long one, but I need an outside perspective because I genuinely feel torn. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F. We were extremely close growing up, practically inseparable, but as we got older, things got complicated. Our parents were divorced when we were teenagers, and Emily ended up living with our dad while I stayed with our mom. This created a bit of a distance, but we always try to maintain our bond. Emily has always been impulsive, especially in relationships. She's dated a string of guys who, frankly, made me uncomfortable for various reasons, but I mostly try to keep my opinions to myself. A couple of years ago, Emily started dating someone named Jason, 30M. At first, I was cautiously optimistic because he seemed genuinely kind and he was very career-oriented. But over time, I noticed small things that rubbed me the wrong way. He had a habit of making belittling jokes, especially about people's careers or lifestyles, and he would sometimes take over conversations, often turning them back to himself in ways that made social gatherings stressful. Emily, on the other hand, seemed smitten and would brush these things off, saying I was too sensitive or that he was just joking. Fast forward a year, Jason proposed, and Emily was ecstatic. She immediately started planning a big wedding and, naturally, invited the whole family. At first, I was happy for her because she's always dreamed of a traditional wedding. But as the planning went on, I began to notice more red flags in how Jason treated her, and even me. During a family brunch, he made a comment about how he didn't understand why I wasted my degree on a low-paying, nonprofit job. I laughed it off awkwardly, but Emily seemed unfazed. Things came to a head a few months ago during a trial run of wedding seating arrangements. Emily asked me to help with the seating plan, and I suggested that maybe we consider people's personalities and compatibility when placing them. Jason overheard and scoffed, saying that I was overthinking and that he didn't see why everyone needed to be coddled. The dismissive tone and the condescending look he gave me were infuriating. Emily told me to let it go because Jason was stressed about the wedding. I tried to explain that my issue wasn't about the wedding, but about how he consistently undermines me and belittles the people around him. Emily brushed me off, saying I was making a mountain out of a molehill. A few weeks later, I went to another family gathering, and Jason made another comment, this time about my appearance, suggesting I should smile more and look more approachable. I froze. Emily laughed it off, and others seemed uncomfortable too. At this point, I started avoiding direct interactions with him, but Emily kept insisting that I was overreacting and that he was just socially awkward. Last week, Emily announced that the wedding was set for next month, and she was expecting me to be fully involved in all pre-wedding events, including dress fittings, bridal showers, and rehearsal dinners. I started to feel extremely anxious about being around Jason, and I realized that attending the wedding itself would be almost unbearable. I tried to talk to Emily, explaining that I could be supportive in other ways, helping with decorations, sending gifts, or writing a heartfelt letter, but I could not in good conscience sit through a ceremony with someone who has repeatedly disrespected me and who makes me feel unsafe emotionally. Emily reacted very negatively. She accused me of being controlling, jealous, and even tried to guilt-trip me by saying I was choosing my discomfort over her happiness. She said that if I truly loved her, I would put my feelings aside for one day. I tried to explain that it's not about one day. It's about enduring a relationship dynamic that is toxic to me. She then brought up our childhood and said I was always the responsible one trying to spoil her. Fun, and implied that I was being selfish. I ended up writing her a long message explaining that I love her, that I want her to be happy, but that I cannot attend the wedding because Jason has repeatedly crossed boundaries and made me feel disrespected in ways that I cannot ignore. I offered alternatives to be supportive from a distance. Emily responded by cutting off communication for now. Our parents are split. My mom supports my decision, saying I have a right to protect my mental health, while my dad thinks I'm overreacting and that I should suck it up for family. I feel a mix of guilt and relief. I know this will hurt Emily, and I hate that our relationship is under strain because of her fiancé. At the same time, I feel like attending would be an endorsement of behavior I find unacceptable. I don't want to be accused of ruining her special day, but I also can't pretend that I'm okay with how Jason treats me. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé? AITA for refusing to let my sister's new husband move in with me temporarily, even though he claims he's in a tough spot. So, this is going to be long, and I want to be as clear as possible about the timeline and all the details because my family keeps framing this as me being unreasonable, but I genuinely don't think I am. I, 28F, live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. I've been here for 3 years, and while it's not huge, I managed to make it really comfortable for myself. I work remotely and spend most of my time at home, and I'm pretty routine-oriented. I value my space and privacy more than I probably should, but it's part of who I am. My sister, 30F, got married about 6 months ago to a man I'll call T, 32M. Before the wedding, I had met him a few times and didn't have any strong feelings either way. He seemed okay, though he was very overconfident in a way that rubbed me the wrong way. My sister and I are close, and we talk frequently, but since she got married, things have been a little different. She's super happy, obviously, and I try to support her. Here's where the conflict starts. About 2 months ago, my sister called me late at night, panicking, and said that T had just gotten fired from his job unexpectedly. She said they were scrambling, and she needed help. She asked if T could stay at my place temporarily while they figured things out. I was blindsided. My apartment is small, and I had never even considered having him stay here. I asked her how long she thought temporarily would be. She said maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I explained that I don't have a spare bedroom. My second bedroom is basically a home office and storage space. And while I could maybe set up a small air mattress in the living room, it would be extremely disruptive to my daily routine. I also work from home, which means I need quiet and focus, and I'm very particular about my schedule. I suggested maybe he could stay at a friend's place or a short-term rental instead. I tried to offer to help him find affordable options online and even said I could pitch in for a few nights if necessary. But having him stay for multiple weeks in my tiny apartment wasn't feasible for me. She got upset. She said I was being cruel and selfish and that families should help each other in times of need. T called me the next day and basically said the same thing, that I was being unreasonable and that a few weeks wouldn't be that bad. He even mentioned that he'd adapt to my space and that he'd be quiet, but I didn't think it was fair to disrupt my life for something that could be avoided. I tried to compromise. I suggested maybe a weekend or 1 or 2 nights, or even helping them pay for a small Airbnb nearby. I even offered to help with groceries and errands. My sister seemed to appreciate that, but T continued to text me, saying things like, "I don't see why you're making such a big deal out of this. It's just a few weeks. You're my sister's sibling. Shouldn't you support me?" I started feeling increasingly frustrated. T's idea of just a few weeks didn't seem to account for the realities of my living situation. My apartment isn't just small, it's structured for my specific lifestyle, and I was concerned about the impact on my mental health and work. I also started noticing some red flags in T's behavior. For instance, he asked if he could leave some of his stuff here indefinitely, including gym equipment and tools, saying he didn't have space at home. He also suggested he might borrow my furniture if they didn't have room at their new apartment. That crossed a line for me. I told both of them that I couldn't host him, no matter how stressed they were. I reiterated that I would help in other ways, researching rentals, pitching in money, helping with groceries or meals, and even offering emotional support to my sister. My sister got extremely upset again, telling me that she felt like I was prioritizing my comfort over family. She accused me of being cold and unsupportive and said she couldn't believe I was turning my back on her when she needed help. It got worse. My parents got involved. They called me to mediate and said I should let him stay. They said I was being selfish and that family means helping each other in times of crisis. I tried explaining all the reasons above: space, work, mental health, and the red flags with his requests. But they kept pushing the idea that I owe my sister this favor because we're family. My sister has also started dropping subtle comments in conversations like, "I guess some people don't put family first," and it's been stressful. I want to make it clear, I am not refusing to help. I just don't think having T live in my apartment is the right way to help. I've helped my sister in other ways, and I've offered to be financially and logistically supportive. I feel like the expectation that I should essentially give up my home for someone I barely know, who hasn't even been part of my life for long, is unfair. I'm now getting mixed messages from friends. Some say I'm right to protect my space and boundaries, while others say that family should come first, and I'm being rigid. My sister keeps bringing it up in calls, and it's straining our relationship. T has started ignoring my messages when I don't respond to his demands, which makes me feel like he's being manipulative. I honestly don't know if I'm overreacting. I feel like I'm standing up for myself, but at the same time, I don't want to harm my relationship with my sister. I'm just not willing to have someone essentially move in for weeks in a small apartment that's my sanctuary, especially someone who I barely know and who has already shown some entitled behavior. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's husband stay in my apartment, even though he's in a tough spot. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded me from the planning process. This has been brewing for a while, and I really need an outside perspective. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emma, 29F, who is getting married in a few months. Growing up, we were fairly close, but over the last few years, our relationship has become strained. The main reason is that Emma has always had a very controlling personality, and I have always been more laid back. I've tried to accommodate her, but I feel like my boundaries are constantly being pushed. The current issue started when Emma got engaged last year. From the beginning, she made it very clear that she wanted a small, intimate wedding and that she wanted to handle all the details herself. I respected that. However, I assumed that as her sister, I would at least be involved in some way in the planning, even if just to give opinions or suggestions. That didn't happen. Instead, I found out about most of the plans through her social media posts or mutual friends. The first major red flag came when she asked me to help with choosing bridesmaid dresses. I assumed this would mean we would go together to look at options, or at least discuss styles, colors, and budgets. When I asked her about it, she told me that she had already made a decision and that she just wanted me to confirm if I could wear the dress. I agreed to wear it, even though I didn't like the style, because I wanted to support her. But when I asked about alterations, sizing, or comfort, she dismissed my concerns, saying it didn't matter as long as I showed up looking fine. I felt unheard and invisible, but I tried to brush it off. The next issue was the bridal shower. Emma told me she didn't want a traditional shower, but she also didn't want anyone else planning one without her involvement. I decided to respect her wishes and didn't organize anything, assuming she would reach out if she wanted my help. Instead, she went ahead and had a very minimal gathering with just a few friends, no family. When I asked why I wasn't included in helping, she said, "I didn't want you to stress over it." I was confused because I was actually excited to help, but I didn't push back. Things escalated when she asked me to do a reading during the ceremony. I was thrilled and agreed immediately. But when I asked if I could see the order of the ceremony or the timing, she told me she had already decided everything with the officiant and that I just needed to show up and read my part. I tried to express that I wanted to be prepared and comfortable, but she brushed it off, saying I was overthinking and that it would be fine. I felt completely sidelined in something that I thought was supposed to be a special moment for family. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago. Emma posted on Instagram a video showing the seating chart for the wedding. I noticed that I was not seated with other family members. I confronted her about it, asking why I was at the back of the room, separate from everyone else. She told me that she had arranged it so that the family who fights less would be together, implying that I was too dramatic or difficult. That hurt deeply. I tried to explain that I had never caused any serious conflict and that being excluded felt like a personal attack. She laughed it off and said I was taking it too seriously. After that, I told her I couldn't attend the wedding. I explained that I didn't feel valued as her sister, and being treated as an afterthought was hurtful. She was shocked and upset, claiming that I was overreacting and that the wedding wasn't about me. It was about her and her fiancé. She said I was being selfish and trying to ruin her day. Our parents are caught in the middle. They say they understand both sides, but are worried about family drama on the wedding day. Since then, several family members and friends have reached out to me, saying I should just go to avoid making things worse. Some have said that weddings are emotional, and that Emma might not realize how hurtful her behavior has been. I understand that, but at the same time, I feel like if I go, I'm just validating being treated like I don't matter. I've been close with Emma before, and it hurts to have our relationship reduced to this. I've also offered to meet with her one-on-one before the wedding to reconcile, but she hasn't responded to my messages. I'm left feeling torn because I don't want to alienate my family completely, but I also can't shake the feeling that attending the wedding under these conditions would be emotionally harmful for me. I don't want to be seen as the villain, but I also don't want to compromise my self-respect. I'm exhausted by the whole situation and not sure if I'm being unreasonable. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded me from all the planning and seems to not value my role in her life. AITA for refusing to let my sister's new boyfriend move in with us, despite her insisting it's fine. I, 29F, have always lived with my younger sister, Emily, 26F, in the house we inherited from our parents a few years ago. Our parents passed away in a car accident when I was 24 and Emily was 21. The house isn't huge, but it's manageable for 2 people with 3 bedrooms, a decent living area, and a small backyard. We've maintained it together, splitting bills, chores, and responsibilities equally. It has always been just the 2 of us, and we've developed a comfortable routine that works well. A few months ago, Emily started dating someone new, Mark, 28M. From the beginning, I could tell she was really into him. He seemed nice at first, polite, friendly, and relatively low-key, but I didn't interact with him much initially because I wanted to give them space. However, after a couple of weeks, Emily started bringing him over more frequently, sometimes staying overnight. I didn't mind a couple of nights here and there, but it started to become almost every night. He would hang out in the living room, leave his things scattered everywhere, and sometimes even help himself to food in the fridge without asking. I tried to stay polite and bring it up casually, but Emily brushed it off, saying, "He's part of my life now. You'll get used to it." I didn't like it, but I tried to be patient. Then, a month ago, Emily casually told me that she and Mark had decided he would move in with us. She said he wanted to save money while he looked for a new job, and it would be temporary, just a few months. I immediately felt uneasy. I told her I wasn't comfortable with it. I explained that our house has always been just the 2 of us, that we had a routine, that we split responsibilities, and that adding someone new, even temporarily, would disrupt that balance. I also mentioned that I didn't know Mark well enough to have him live with us. Emily got defensive and said I was overreacting. She said she had been with Mark for months, and I needed to trust her judgment. She also pointed out that it would save him money and help him get back on his feet, which she thought was a good deed. I tried reasoning with her. I said that if it were just a short visit, I could handle it, but moving in permanently, even temporarily, wasn't acceptable to me. I offered alternatives. He could rent a small room nearby, stay in a short-term rental, or even stay at his parents' place for a while. Emily argued that those options were inconvenient and that living with us made more sense. She accused me of being selfish and unsupportive. Things escalated when she started making plans as if he was already moving in. She began rearranging the rooms, moving furniture around, and buying extra toiletries and groceries without asking me. When I confronted her, she said I was being controlling and that she had a right to decide who she brought into her home. I reminded her that it was our home, inherited from both of our parents, and that major decisions like this should be mutual. She said that since we both live there, I should just get used to it. I then drew a boundary. I told her point blank that if Mark moved in, I would have to consider moving out temporarily because I couldn't live under the same roof with someone I didn't know and didn't agree to live with. She got very upset, saying I was being dramatic and that I didn't care about her or Mark. She even suggested that I was jealous of their relationship. The tension in the house has been unbearable since then. Emily is upset with me and has barely spoken to me unless necessary. Mark, when he visits, seems aware that I'm not happy with the situation and has been polite, but there's an awkwardness whenever he comes over. Friends and family have started noticing the strain between us, and some have suggested that I let it go and allow him to move in to keep the peace. I feel torn. On one hand, I want my sister to be happy, and I understand that. She wants Mark to be part of her life. On the other hand, I feel that she's disregarding my feelings and making unilateral decisions that affect our shared living situation. I've always tried to accommodate her and be supportive of her relationships, but this feels like a boundary I cannot compromise on. Recently, Emily hinted that she might move out if I continue to refuse, which makes me feel guilty because I don't want to lose her or force her into a difficult situation. I've also considered that perhaps I'm being rigid and not seeing her perspective, but I really don't want to have someone else living here permanently without mutual agreement. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in with us, despite her insistence that it's fine. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé. I, 28F, have always been close with my younger sister, Emily, 25F, or at least I thought I was. Growing up, we fought like normal siblings, but we always had each other's backs. I was her go-to person for advice, emotional support, and literally everything else. So, when she got engaged last year, I was genuinely happy for her. That happiness lasted about a month. Emily's fiancé, Josh, 27M, was introduced to the family as her college boyfriend. At first, I tried to be welcoming and polite. I gave him a fair chance, thinking that he might be a good person despite not being someone I'd naturally gravitate toward. The problem started during the engagement party. I noticed that he had a habit of making these passive-aggressive remarks disguised as jokes. For example, when I complimented Emily on her dress, he said, "Wow, I didn't know she could pull off something that fancy. Are you sure she didn't steal it from someone?" I laughed it off, thinking maybe it was awkward humor, but my sister looked uncomfortable, and I started to feel uneasy. Over the next few months, his behavior escalated. He would constantly criticize Emily in front of friends and family, often about trivial things. One time, during a family dinner, Emily mentioned she had gotten a promotion at work, and Josh said, "I guess someone finally realized you can do your job without screwing it up." Everyone was silent, and Emily didn't respond, but I could see how hurt she was. I tried talking to Emily privately about it, assuming maybe she didn't realize how he was treating her. She was defensive at first and said, "He's just joking. I can handle it. You're overreacting." I let it go, thinking maybe I was misinterpreting his behavior. But as their wedding planning continued, I noticed he was trying to control almost every detail. He vetoed several of Emily's ideas, from the color scheme to the guest list. And whenever she tried to assert herself, he made comments like, "Are you sure you can handle making these decisions? I just wanted to be perfect." The breaking point came about 2 months ago. Emily asked me to help with the seating chart. I spent a couple of days organizing it carefully, trying to balance friends, family, and relatives who didn't get along. I presented it to her and Josh, expecting feedback. Josh immediately started criticizing everything. He said, "You clearly don't understand our family dynamics. Why would you put Uncle Tim next to Aunt Lisa? That's ridiculous. Are you even thinking?" I tried to explain my reasoning, but he interrupted me constantly, talking over me and dismissing my input. Emily didn't defend me, and I realized she was letting him dominate the conversation. That night, I told my partner about it, and we both agreed that Josh's behavior was extremely controlling and borderline abusive. I considered bringing it up with Emily, but I didn't want to start a fight. Then last week, Emily sent out the final wedding invitations and asked me to RSVP. I read through them and realized something. Josh had written a note on the RSVP asking me to sit at a table with only his college friends, who I barely knew, and made it clear that he didn't want me interacting with certain family members. I couldn't believe it. I texted Emily expressing my concern, saying that I didn't feel comfortable being treated like I wasn't part of the family at her wedding. Her response shocked me. She said, "This is Josh's day too, and he wants things a certain way. You're being unreasonable. If you can't be supportive, maybe it's better if you don't come." I was stunned. The person I've always been closest to was basically asking me to tolerate someone I found manipulative and dismissive just to avoid conflict. I tried reasoning with her, saying that I love her and want to celebrate with her, but I cannot condone someone treating me or her family this way. She said, "You don't understand our relationship. He's good for me. He makes me happy. If you really love me, you'll respect that." I thought about it for days. I really did not want to miss my sister's wedding, but I also didn't want to pretend that I was okay with her fiancé's behavior. Last night, I sent Emily a message explaining that I would not be attending the wedding. I told her I love her, that I wish her happiness, and that I hope she has a wonderful day, but I could not be part of an event where I would feel disrespected and uncomfortable because of her partner. I haven't heard back yet, and I know my decision will probably upset her. My parents are divided. My mom says I should go for Emily's sake and just try to get along, while my dad understands my concerns and says that I have a right to set boundaries. My friends are split too. Some say I'm doing the right thing by not tolerating toxic behavior, and others say I'm being dramatic and should put my feelings aside for my sister's big day. I feel torn because I genuinely care about Emily and want her to have a happy wedding, but I also feel that attending would compromise my values and mental health. I'm beginning to wonder if I'm overreacting or if I'm justified in standing my ground. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because I can't stand her fiancé's controlling and disrespectful behavior. AITA for refusing to host my family's annual holiday after my sister humiliated me in front of everyone. So, this past holiday season, my family's big event was the annual Christmas Eve dinner at my parents' house. Every year, it's been a tradition that my sister, Anna, and I alternate hosting, but ever since I moved closer to my parents, I've ended up hosting more often because it's easier for everyone to get there. I don't mind hosting generally because I enjoy cooking and having everyone together, but this year something happened that made me reconsider the whole tradition. I, 34F, live in a modest townhouse about 10 minutes from my parents. My sister, Anna, 36F, lives about an hour away and is very competitive, controlling, and has a flair for drama. She has always tried to make her life seem more glamorous and hers the perfect holiday. She's married to Greg, 37M, who is usually laid back but goes along with her antics. I also have 2 kids, ages 7 and 4, which she sometimes uses as leverage in arguments, like saying I need to control them more or my house is too chaotic for family gatherings. This year, I decided to host Christmas Eve at my place. I spent weeks planning the menu, buying decorations, cleaning every corner, and even made some special touches like homemade ornaments for the kids to hang on the tree. I asked Anna to bring her famous stuffing, and she agreed. I also coordinated with my parents and a few cousins who would be coming. I thought everything was going smoothly until the day of the party. On the morning of Christmas Eve, Anna showed up 2 hours early, claiming she wanted to help me finish preparations. I didn't mind her helping, so I let her in. The problem began when she started rearranging my furniture, moving my dining table slightly to optimize flow, which I politely asked her not to do. Then she began critiquing my decorations, telling me that my color scheme was cheap and doesn't feel festive. I tried to laugh it off, thinking she was just being dramatic, but it started making me anxious. The real problem came when my parents and cousins arrived. Anna began loudly commenting on every detail. She pointed at my tree and said, "Oh, that's cute. I mean, it's small, but it'll do for a kid's house, right?" I tried to ignore her and focus on greeting everyone, but she didn't stop. At one point, she loudly said, "Wow, I see you didn't bother to clean under the couch. Looks like someone's too busy with their kids to bother with actual housework." I froze. My parents exchanged awkward glances, and I felt my face flush. I excused myself and tried to retreat to the kitchen to check on the food. Anna followed me and continued, now turning her attention to my menu. She scoffed at my dishes, saying, "I hope you didn't expect anyone to actually eat this. Who even makes mashed potatoes from scratch anymore? And this gravy looks watery." I reminded her that I spent hours making everything myself, and I could hear the frustration in my voice. Dinner was tense. Anna continued making small, sharp comments in front of everyone, like asking my dad if he remembered the real stuffing from her house, and whispering to cousins that my cookies were store-bought level. I try to laugh off the comments, but it was clear people noticed. My kids were confused and upset because Anna even criticized how they were setting the table. After dinner, when I tried to suggest we play a board game, Anna loudly declared that my game selection was childish and suggested we all go to her house for next year because her decorations are actually elegant. I had reached my limit. I told her, in front of everyone, that she had no right to demean my home, my cooking, or my children, and that if she had a problem with anything, she could keep it to herself. The room went silent, and she stormed out, taking Greg with her. Afterward, my parents called to tell me they understood why I was upset, but were disappointed because the family Christmas spirit was ruined. I told them I was done hosting if Anna was going to continue acting this way. They begged me to reconsider, saying it's a family tradition and that I shouldn't let her behavior dictate the event. I explained that hosting is supposed to be about bringing the family together, not being publicly shamed, and that I won't tolerate that anymore. A few days later, Anna called me and said I was being dramatic, that I ruined everyone's Christmas by embarrassing her. She claimed that she was just trying to help and that my oversensitive reaction was the problem. She also said my parents were disappointed in me, which I know is partly true because they wanted the evening to go smoothly. Now, I've told my parents I will not host next year or any future holidays if Anna is going to act like that. I suggested maybe we could do a neutral location like a restaurant, but they think that's too impersonal. My friends say I handled it appropriately by standing up for myself, but my sister is accusing me of overreacting and being a bad host. So, AITA for refusing to host my family's holiday because my sister humiliated me in front of everyone? Or should I just bite the bullet and let her continue to behave this way to maintain the tradition? I really want the holidays to be joyful, not a stage for my sister to feel superior. AITA for refusing to let my younger sister's fiancé move in with me? I, 32F, have been living in my small but cozy apartment in the city for about 5 years. I moved here after finishing my master's degree, and it's been my little sanctuary. I work as a freelance graphic designer, which means I spend a lot of time at home, but I like it that way. I've also been single for a while, by choice, because I value my independence and the routine I've built around my work and personal life. My younger sister, Lily, 28F, is getting married next month. Her fiancé, Alex, 30M, is a nice guy in general, but I've had some reservations about him for years. They've been dating for 5 years, and he's always been around, but he's messy, loud, and has a habit of overstaying his welcome. For context, he used to crash at my apartment when he was visiting Lily, sometimes for days at a time, and I always felt uncomfortable asking him to leave. He's not mean or disrespectful in an outright way, but he just doesn't seem to understand boundaries. About a week ago, I got a call from Lily. She sounded panicked, which is unusual because she's generally calm. She told me that Alex had broken his lease at his apartment because of a pest infestation and that he had nowhere to stay for the next month. She asked if he could move into my apartment temporarily until after the wedding. I froze. I've spent the last 5 years building a life in this apartment that works for me, and having someone else live here, even temporarily, would completely disrupt my routine. I tried to explain this gently. I told her that I work from home, that I have specific routines, and that my apartment is very small, so having an extra person would make things extremely difficult. I also mentioned that Alex and I haven't exactly been the best of friends. We get along fine in small doses, but living together is a whole different story. Lily started crying on the phone and said, "I can't believe you're saying no. This is a huge emergency. He has nowhere else to go. He's my fiancé." I felt my chest tighten because I love my sister and I don't like seeing her upset. I suggested a few alternatives. I offered to help him find a short-term Airbnb or a hotel, even offered to cover part of the cost if money was an issue. I also offered to help him look for temporary sublets. Lily shot all of these down. She said, "It's not the same. He needs to be here. We need to spend as much time together as possible before the wedding. I can't believe you're putting your comfort over family." At that point, I started to get defensive. I reminded her that my apartment is not a hotel, and I shouldn't have to sacrifice my mental health and personal space for someone else, even if he's family. The conversation ended awkwardly. Lily was still crying, and I felt guilty, but I didn't change my mind. 2 days later, she came over with Alex. They were both trying to convince me again, but I was firm. I told Alex that I wasn't comfortable with him staying here, and I repeated my offer to help him find an alternative. Alex looked annoyed and asked, "So you're just going to leave your sister and me stranded? After all we've done for you over the years?" That stung because I have helped them countless times. Lily with moving, Alex with minor repairs, driving them to events, you name it. But I also felt that I was being guilt-tripped. Lily tried to argue with me in front of Alex, saying that I was being selfish and unsupportive. I snapped a little, which I hate doing, but I said, I am supportive, but not at the expense of my own boundaries and mental health. I'm not your hotel, and I'm not comfortable with this. They left after a long, tense conversation. Since then, I've been getting messages from both of them. Lily keeps sending long texts trying to guilt me into changing my mind. Alex sent a text saying he didn't understand why I was being so difficult and that I was making things unnecessarily hard. Yvette ignored most of the messages because responding feels like it would just lead to more conflict. Here's the thing. My apartment is extremely small, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, and my work requires a quiet environment. I tried to compromise by suggesting temporary alternatives, offering financial help for a short-term rental, even offering to let him stay in my living room for a single night as a last resort, but they are rejecting all of it. I feel trapped because my sister is one of the most important people in my life, and I hate seeing her upset. At the same time, I know that letting Alex move in would create weeks of stress and tension, and I don't think it's fair for me to do that, just because he has nowhere else to go. Some of our mutual friends have started weighing in. A few think I'm being unreasonable and that families should support each other in emergencies, even if it's inconvenient. Others agree with me, saying that setting boundaries is important and that temporary help doesn't have to mean sacrificing your entire living situation. I'm torn because I don't want to damage my relationship with my sister, but I also don't want to feel trapped in my own home for a month. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with me, even though he technically has nowhere else to stay before the wedding. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.